Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola law firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. In our 30th year of broadcasting, our guest is Anthe Maria Bova, and she's a general counsel and director of pro bono programs for the New York County Lawyers Association. But what we have to discuss is of interest and importance to lawyers everywhere. Welcome back to Law You Should Know.
Thank you.
Today we're going to discuss breaking down barriers, especially for those who have criminal convictions or maybe on parole, and that is holding them back from rejoining society, may adversely affect their chance to get a job or housing or even to vote. So, Anthe, why is this Project Restore so important?
So we have Project Restore is one of our pro bono programs. So as you mentioned, I'm the director of pro bono at the New York County Lawyers Association. We have two pro bono programs that help individuals who have criminal convictions. And just to be clear, we're talking about individuals who have convictions that haven't necessarily been incarcerated. So that's a very broad population.
So even if someone was on parole, they were convicted of basically any felony?
Correct. So anyone who has a criminal record, so when we're talking about parole, actually, usually that person probably would have been incarcerated and then released on parole. But for instance, someone could be sentenced to 5 years probation and never have been incarcerated, but they still have a criminal record. So we help any sort of individual who has any type of criminal record, whether felony, misdemeanor, both, multiple. What we do helps a very, very broad population.
And this is to help them become a law-abiding member of society so they can get a job, they can be productive, and they can possibly vote or obtain some license.
Right. Well, what I'd say is our clients are law-abiding. So what we do, and I'll focus on just one program right now, is we have an initiative project where we partner with the New York County Clerk, the Honorable Milton Tingling, where we educate the public, we educate formerly incarcerated individuals with criminal records on what are called certificates of relief from civil disabilities and certificates of good conduct. And what these do is help, as you said, break down certain barriers that may automatically be there as a result of a conviction, or help an individual obtain, most importantly, a job. So a certificate of relief from civil disabilities or certificate of good conduct, its most important value in New York is the ability to be able to get a job.
So if you had that question on an application, you could legally say that you did not have a felony conviction?
No. Okay, so let's be clear. Certificates of relief and certificates of good conduct do not expunge convictions. So in New York State, there is practically no expungement. You can get expungement for maybe minor traffic violations, and also recently a new law was passed where you could expunge certain marijuana possession convictions, but otherwise there's really no expungement in New York. So that's actually a really great question, because we get that a lot from clients, that sometimes they were told, I want to apply for this because it's going to be taken away from my record. That is absolutely not the case. The other thing I want to clarify is you mentioned applications for jobs. So with the Fair Chance Act in 2015, also known as Ban the Box, you actually can't ask that question anyway on an employment application. So, we have clients who come to us and say, well, even if I get the certificate, should I say up front? I mean, that's really more of a personal choice. But what the certificate can help do is when the background check is actually run after the individual gets a conditional offer, which is what the law is supposed to be, they could offer up this certificate as saying, hey, the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision or the court, because it could be issued by two different entities, as basically saying, I've been rehabilitated. So under the law, under the New York State Corrections law, if you've been issued a certificate, the law says that it creates what's called a presumption of rehabilitation. So it's a really powerful tool.
Would this actually show up in the criminal check, or you'd have to volunteer it?
The fact that you have a certificate?
Yes.
You'd have to volunteer it. So when you run a background check, only the convictions that you have will show up on the background check, of course, unless they've been sealed. And so that's something else I want to clarify, because we get that question a lot from our clients and from our attorneys who volunteer with us, is that these certificates also do not seal. So sealing does exist in New York, but it's a completely different legal remedy than applying for a certificate of relief or a certificate of good conduct.
And we're going to go into detail about your programs in a few minutes, but you're training lawyers to assist people who need this help to obtain these relief.
Yes, that's right. So what we do with all of our pro bono programs, including our initiative on certificates of relief and certificates of good conduct, is we provide CLE training, and that CLE training is for free. You receive the credit upon volunteering with our program. So it's a really great opportunity, of course, to give back to the community, but also get CLE credit training, which is, of course, very valuable. And we do updates to our training on a regular basis.
And if you're a criminal law attorney, or you do some criminal law, it's probably a very good skill to have to help your paying clients.
Yes, I think that what we've learned over the course of this program is how many attorneys who work in the criminal law space actually don't know about this. And part of the reason is that it's covered under the corrections law, but it's really a civil remedy. It occurs after you have, quote unquote, paid your debt to society and actually served out your sentence. So there are a lot of criminal law practitioners who don't understand how important it is to know about this, to be able to ask for it when the time is appropriate, because you could even ask for a certificate of relief at sentencing if your client is eligible. And a lot of attorneys that we've met who work in this space didn't even know that. So we've been doing a lot of education on that.
And how many people out there who potentially you can be of help to?
So just if you think about it locally, I looked up this number very recently. 13,000 individuals just in Nassau County were convicted of a crime in 2018. So taking it to a state level, it's over almost 500,000. So we're talking about a very, very broad population. I'd also say that most of our clients do end up being our people of color, definitely poor. I mean, we're pro bono programs, and I think these are normally the individuals who need our help the most, because the discrimination, the employment discrimination, is very vast for that population.
And this is a big barrier to them returning to a productive role in society, and you're trying to just give them a hand to get over this barrier.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of studies that show there is a direct link between employment and recidivism. And what I mean by recidivism is, returning back to a life of crime. So I would say that getting a job is the number one. Housing is also extremely important. And actually, certificates can also help with housing, except employment is the more common reason someone would get a certificate.
So just take a few minutes to describe the process that you help attorneys to guide their clients through.
Sure. So I'll explain the difference between the two certificates first and how we educate our attorneys about them. So the certificates themselves, you have a certificate of relief from civil disabilities and certificate of good conduct. Effectively, the remedy that you get is the same, that they're both relieving barriers. They're both creating a presumption of rehabilitation. The main difference between the two is that you apply for certificate of relief from civil disabilities if you have no more than one felony or any number of misdemeanors. If you have more than one felony, you have to apply for certificate of good conduct. If you apply for certificate of good conduct, it's through the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, formerly known as parole. If you're applying for certificate of relief from civil disabilities and haven't spent any time in a state facility, don't have any out-of-state convictions, you're actually normally applying to the sentencing court in which you were convicted. So those are the two types. So what we do is we partner with various community organizations, one being the Fortune Society. We also work with the Center for Appellate Litigation as well. We work with the HOPE program, who have a client base already of individuals who have these criminal records, and we do it in a clinic format. So we'll arrive and we'll be there for a couple of hours, and we have attorneys that are matched up with individuals. You run through the individual's criminal record to figure out what they're actually eligible for. And once you figure that out, you choose the one of the two applications that are available and run through that process. And I would say the biggest value add that we provide, aside from telling someone that this remedy exists, telling them what they're eligible for, is actually helping them understand how they need to actually build up a strong application. And the most important thing for one of these applications is showing what's called evidence of rehabilitation. And so this whole process can be very confusing for these clients, because the certificate itself is evidence of rehabilitation, but then you also need to show the court or the Department of Corrections that, you've been working. You have to show them that maybe you have letters of recommendation from maybe a volunteer organization that you've been working with. Get letters of recommendation perhaps if you've been going to therapy or if there's a drug treatment program. That's all considered evidence of rehabilitation.
And what about if you've been taking classes or going to school? Those
are all really good examples. So we wouldn't say that there's a finite list of what you need to include, but we try to explain to them. And part of the process too, as I would say with any form of community lawyering, which is what I call what we do at the New York County Lawyers Association and our pro bono programs, is also just giving the client room and space to talk about themselves, to let them be heard. And by doing that, our volunteer attorneys, and also we have volunteer law graduates and law students as well. You don't have to be an attorney to do this work. That'll help them better consult with the individual, because they'll be able to open up and be honest.
And you're providing them with a lot of hope.
Absolutely. We definitely try to be realistic, certainly. We have some clients who come to us who've been convicted of a violent felony or say, for instance, burglary. And they say, hey, I want to become a security guard. And so we try to say, well, we're not going to necessarily knock that out for you, but maybe it might not be the most realistic option for you. But we definitely encourage all of our clients, all of our consultees to do as much as possible, and getting a certificate is just one step of that.
Does this help them at all with any immigration issues?
No.
Or fighting deportation?
No. The certificate has nothing to do with immigration issues. I have spoken to some in the public defense bar, generally, who said sometimes they've been wary of asking for certificate of relief at sentencing because they don't necessarily want to rock the boat if they're getting, a certain conviction that wouldn't affect someone's immigration status, but the remedy of getting a certificate of relief itself has nothing to do with immigration.
And what does the attorney then do if they have some credentials to put in the application? What happens next?
So what happens is after we run through the process, this is a pro se consultation. So we don't really right now see the client from beginning to end. I do some ad hoc work with some of the clients who contact me afterward. They all know who I am, and I've helped certain individuals from beginning to end. But the point is that you fill out the application, you attach all of your evidence of rehabilitation, and then you're either submitting it to the sentencing court or you're mailing it over to docs. So that's really the last step.
Are they sending it in their own name, or it's going under the attorney's name?
No. So an individual has to apply themselves, but sometimes what we encourage is if you have an attorney who's assisting you, copying them on a cover letter to show that you've been represented. It definitely helps.
Okay, we're going to continue our discussion of this topic in a moment. You're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also on the internet at nccradio.org. We'll be back in a moment.
This portion of programming on WHPC is brought to you on behalf of the Nassau County Bar Association, helping both the public and lawyers since 1899. They are the largest suburban bar association in the country. The Nassau County Bar Association offers clinics where you can meet privately with an attorney to prevent or solve legal problems involving Hurricane Sandy, foreclosure, wills, or elder law. Speakers on almost any legal topic are also available to schools or community groups. They can also help lawyers advance their legal careers and offer a place to network. Learn more about the Nassau County Bar Association by calling 516-747-4070 or visit nassaubar.org.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know, celebrating our 30th anniversary. We're talking about Project Restore, and our guest is Anthe Maria Bova. She's General Counsel and Director of Pro Bono Programs for the New York County Lawyers Association. She's talking about some programs she oversees to train lawyers to help people who may have some convictions or problems with the criminal justice system apply for relief so they will qualify for housing and perhaps to vote and to get a better job and leave them in better shape. You mentioned about the application process, how attorneys help them with it, and then their work is pretty much done. Mm-hmm. And the client's actually submitting the application and supporting documents. What are some common reasons that it's denied?
Okay, so first I'll start with the standard of review. So the law requires that a certificate is granted if it's consistent with the rehabilitation of the individual, and also if it's in the public interest. And I wanted to bring this up because it's just a very broad, a very vague standard. So the problem with this, and this is part of the reason why we developed this program, is that could also mean that it could be very a broad and vague standard to deny. If someone is denied a certificate, it technically does have to be in writing with a reason. It's been a little inconsistent in terms of what we have and haven't seen, but what I'll tell you, though, is that with our program, when we do follow up with individuals, we've really had a lot of success with individuals who've applied, particularly with the Department of Corrections, because that whole process is a little more predictable in terms of what to expect and the timing of it.
How long does the process take? So
if you're applying through the court, the process could take a few weeks. So certainly, if you're eligible, it's a better prospect because it'll take less time. The Department of Corrections, unfortunately, could take upwards of a year. I had a client who I helped from beginning to end, and it took him, he did get a certificate of good conduct, but it took a year, and it's a problem that we're trying to address with them.
If you apply to the court, does the applicant have to go into the court?
Yeah, so that's actually a big difference between the two. If you're applying for certificate of relief through the court system, you have to apply in person, and there's often an in-person interview which may happen that day, or you may be called back. And the process is, once you apply, the judge to whom it's assigned will ask for an actual report from the parole office. So it's similar to what happens at the Department of Corrections. It just happens much more quickly. I think the idea being is if you're getting a certificate of relief through the court, it only covers a single conviction. If you're getting a certificate of good conduct through the Department of Corrections, it covers your entire rap sheet.
Is there anything you can do to help get a more favorable parole report, probation report?
No, I think by that point, it's that probation report is going to be whatever notes they have in the system. It includes the pre-sentence investigation notes from parole, which are unchangeable, unfortunately. But I think that what could help is the interview, and also we do coach the individuals we consult with on, the types of things that they can talk about, and perhaps cover letters to the application, basically telling their story and how they've changed.
Okay. The other big project, tell us about the other big project you're involved with as part of your work with pro bono programs.
Sure. So we've been talking about our initiative on certificates of relief from civil disabilities and certificates of good conduct. We also have a separate but very related project that helps individuals with criminal records called Project Restore, that trains attorneys as well as law graduates, law students. You don't have to be an attorney to volunteer with this program as well, to represent individuals who have been denied certain vocational licenses from the Department of State by virtue of having a criminal record. And so the way that works is an individual will apply. Most often what we see is a security guard licenses. And the irony is, you could be denied a security guard license by the Department of State, yet it happens to be an extremely popular job prospect for individuals with criminal records, and you could be denied one for having a criminal record. So someone, say, applies for a security guard license, and then they get a letter from the Department of State basically saying that they're planning to deny the license. However, they have the right to appeal within 35 days. If they do so, they have an administrative hearing in front of an administrative law judge. So our attorneys will get to know the client, get to know their story, and represent them in those administrative hearings. And the reason this is important is, certificates can really help. However, the corrections law does give certain governmental bodies, like the Department of State Division of Licensing Services, the discretion to not issue certain licenses. So the work that we're doing here is basically taking our certificates initiative one step further by assisting individuals who are being proposed denial for a vocational license simply by having a criminal record.
Could this also be for license as a barber?
Yes.
Or a licensed practical nurse?
Something interesting that we've been seeing, definitely barber. Nursing is licensed by a different agency.
Okay.
So we actually met a couple clients who had gone through training, both for security guard and barber, either currently while they were incarcerated or through some type of transitional program where no one told them that there would be this obstacle. So they said, hey, I got trained to be a barber. I'm going to go get my license. No problem. Meanwhile, this person had been convicted of a violent felony with a knife. I mean, the likelihood, and this is what I mean, we try to be very practical with our clients. We help them out, but we say, maybe that's not going to be the most realistic option for you. So part of what we're doing with our pro bono programs is not only directly providing these legal services, but trying to actually educate the community and these organizations that provide these trainings, that at least if they're going to provide the training, they should tell the individual that they may have this obstacle and may need to appeal a denial.
Now, if you have the certificate of release, as you talked about in the first part of the program, will that automatically allow them to apply for a security guard license, or will that become a good credential they can use with that application?
Both. So for security guard licenses, if you have been convicted of what they consider a quote-unquote serious offense, you will automatically be denied unless you have a certificate. And the definition of a serious offense is very, very broad. It spans violent felonies like murder and manslaughter to something like criminal mischief. An example of criminal mischief is possession of graffiti materials or actually committing graffiti. So if you've been convicted of a serious offense, you must get a certificate of relief from civil disabilities or a certificate of good conduct, depending which one you're eligible for. If you don't have a serious offense, the certificate of relief will really just help you out. And so we recently represented a client that was in the process of applying for certificate of relief. He didn't need one. When our volunteer attorney went to go represent him at the hearing, they talked about it. They talked about all of the evidence of rehabilitation that they submitted with the application, even though he didn't get it yet. And actually, the judge, in his decision to grant the security guard license, mentioned the fact that they were in the process of applying. So it definitely helped.
We only have a moment or two left in the program, so I just want you to give your contact information for attorneys who want to undergo the CLE training, which should be free, or want to participate in these pro bono programs.
Sure. So again, my name is Anthe Maria Bova. My email is B as in boy, O, V as in Victor, A at nycla.org. Our website is www.nycla.org.
And as she mentioned earlier, this affects at least 13,000 people in Nassau County and perhaps 500,000 in New York State. Even if you don't live in Manhattan, you can try to volunteer for these programs, and it's good legal experience, even especially if you're a private defense counsel, because you learn about these added services you can provide to your clients. Any final thoughts?
I would say that, as someone who didn't practice any sort of criminal law-related work before I came to NYCLA, this has been an immensely powerful program that I've learned about, and I think it would be very rewarding for any attorney or law student or law graduate to volunteer with.
And at least maybe you should find out when the seminars are, and you might enjoy it. It's a good way to also meet other lawyers. Just give us your contact information one more time. Sure.
My email address is abova@nycla.org. Our website is www.nycla.org.
Okay, I would like to thank you for listening to our program about restorative justice and breaking down barriers. If you missed any portion of the program, you can listen to the podcast at nccradio.org, and there are many other podcasts about the law on that site. And also tune in next week at the same time for another program on Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also on the internet at nccradio.org.